If the Nissan 350Z was interstellar, then I would argue that the Nissan 370Z is a rival.
What's that?
You changed my mind.
These movies are in drastically similar fields, yet for some reason, one got all of the love and the other one you forget about until somebody tells you to watch it for the 12th time and finally you listen to them, that person being me. You watch and you say, wow, that movie was incredible. Welcome back to 20 minutes of useless information on a random particular car that you voted on in the comments, and today we're talking about the Nissan 370Z. You're gonna wanna stay for the whole thing because you're going to some juicy bits and pieces that might win you Who Wants to Be a Millionaire at the end of this video. And of course, if you want us to cover a car, AKA the guy that keeps saying K-car or K-truck in the comments, keep commenting, bub, all right? We're working on it. I just gotta pick which one because there's about 60 of them, which by the way, if you're not subscribed yet, please be sure to do so. And if you're listening and you wanna know more yapping amounts of information about something, we do have a podcast, but that's an hour long instead of 20 minutes. I'm not sure why you'd wanna listen for an hour, but you know, nevertheless, here we both are. So with that being said, let's get into this. I do wanna say a little bit, just starting off, you guys seem to appreciate the cooking notes, so we will be dropping those tips in here as well so that we all can grow. Predominantly about 92% of the people who watch this are men. So 92% of you men can become better cooks, which will actually help you in your endeavors to become an adult. I'm still learning every single day, but here we are. With that being said, is the oldest running trim in vehicle history the 350Z or 370Z? The answer, for some reason, I didn't know people didn't know this, no. It ran for 11 years. It ran from 2009 to 2020. It did run for a long time. It was a platform that worked. It was relatively cheap for Nissan to make, and the 370Z was more of like an iteration upon the 350Z. A lot of people feel that the 370Z kind of seemed like it was slower, sluggish, maybe less connected, and we'll get into why maybe it feels a little bit less connected, but objectively, if you're trying to choose between the two, the 370Z is objectively a better driver car. It's actually a little bit shorter. It is wider than the 350Z, but it had more aluminum bits in the subframe, the engine cradle, door panels, hood, latch, all that sort of stuff. It also got stiffer, and it also got a little bit lighter. They used some forged aluminum bits in the steering, which is why some people say that they fell in love with driving this car because it just felt so easy to drive. But at the same time that something gets easy to drive, it's pretty easy for people to say that you feel disconnected when you drive something. It's the difference between a digital experience and an analog experience. And if you're typing, this guy sounds like Linus Tech Tips right now, I am going to sue, all right? Why do people say the 350Z is better than the 370Z? That's a really good question. The people will say that because a lot of times the 350Z is a little bit more of that like lineage piece, all right? It's more heritage, it's more authentic, it's more raw. At the end of the day, it's older, so it doesn't have as many tech bits to really help it like the 370Z does. The 370Z, in my humble opinion, looks better than the 350Z. And I'm not gonna make eye contact as I say that because I know I'm already upsetting a lot of people right now. But that's not to say the 350Z is a slouch. I think both can be gorgeous. The problem is the 350Zs have gotten thrashed more times than I can count. And I honestly cannot recall the last time I saw a clean, well-modified 350Z. Whereas the 370Z, I've seen more because most people haven't thrashed those into a wall at US Air yet. But time will tell, and I'm sure it will change over the next couple years because the 370Z is actually relatively affordable now. A lot of people think that they're still $25,000, and while some trims are, they're actually not. I found quite a few 370Zs as I was making this video that were like $12,000 in Appleton, Wisconsin, which if they're 12 grand in Appleton, they're gonna be pennies everywhere else. Now, with that being said, we're talking about cooking tips as well. My cooking tip right now is gonna talk a little bit about how you can make salmon for your significant other. Because if you're preparing for tax season time and you bought a bunch of car parts from martiniworks.com, because hell yeah, why wouldn't you? You might be finding yourself spending your evenings in the garage where your significant other's in the house waiting for you to be done. Guess what, bucko? You're not gonna get done on time. Which means a great way that you can show that you love that person is by cooking them a home-cooked meal. And in this video, we're gonna talk about salmon. Cooking tips number 1, okay? You should make salmon for your significant other because it's cheap, it's easy, and it's classy as hell, okay? Like I said, if you're working on a car project late at night, you're gonna need this. So, a decent sized piece of salmon, butter, a bag of broccoli, lemon, medium salsa, something like El Arroyo or Mateo's does best. Avocado oil is key. Get rid of the virgin oil. Avocado oil, white rice, salt and pepper, and follow along. Now, what are the issues with the Nissan 370Z? When we talk about this a little bit, people think the 370Z kind of got into this like JDM Stellantis sort of feel. In terms of the sense where it just doesn't seem to hit the same level of like raw as the 350Z. To that end, there's only a few issues with the 370Z. So I wouldn't necessarily say that the 350 is better. I still just don't really believe that rumor. But the 370Z does have a couple issues. Slave cylinder fails from 2009 to 2015, almost iconically so. Every single one of them has. Folks say that the headers are garbage on some of the earlier models, so updating them as you get into mods could be an easy up for you if you want to. Some people say that the gallery gaskets can cause engine failure. Again, particularly with the earlier year 370Zs. So either make sure that they were checked, repaired, or completely replaced or cleaned or whatever it is that you gotta do to make sure that you don't have the issue that the first owner did. Steering lock failure is a common thing. It's a common Nissan thing. And then people don't know, and people don't like that I mentioned that 370Zs do have a tendency to drink a little bit of oil when we made our how to modify video. They said, no, they don't. No, they don't. They do. They just do, and that's okay. You can be in denial. It doesn't change the fact that it's true. We're in denial all the time when we turn on the news and we listen to what people are saying, yet it happens anyway. Nissan 370Zs, as they gain mileage and as the engines do get a little bit older, do have a tendency to drink a little bit more oil. So just keep an eye on it and you'll be right as rain. Now, does the 370Z make a good daily? You might be watching this thinking to yourself, Alex, what is the next tip about food? We're not talking about food right now. We're talking about 370Zs, stay with me. The 370Z does make a good daily. And I mean that in the sense that it doesn't really at all. But can you make it work? Yes. The same way that you can make a Hyundai Genesis coupe work as a daily, you can make a Nissan 370Z work as a daily. Now, any two-door sports car is not a good daily, but this one has a trunk, okay? It does actually do a pretty good job. Nissan did a good job with the Z cars. They always have. I would argue that if it wasn't for the price issues and the dealer issues on the new Z, along with just the actual fulfillment of the car, the new Z would be a monumental success as well. Because the recipe is very simple. Fun to drive, easy engine, rear-wheel drive, manual transmission, tons of fun. That's all you have to do. A little bit of a boot in the back allows you to drive this car pretty much anywhere, and that couldn't be more true than the 370Z. Now, with that being said, there are some things that you're gonna wanna keep in mind. Number 1, insurance is gonna hate you if you have any form of tickets. And number 2, everything and everyone will always wanna race you because if you have a red Nissan, everybody just assumes you're an 18-year-old child and they're gonna race you in their Corvette. Bad news, you're probably gonna lose. These aren't necessarily the quickest, they're not the slowest either, but don't think you're gonna win any drag races. So with that being said, if you're planning on just getting one for a daily, awesome idea. If you think you'd wanna get a 350Z for a daily, that's where I'd probably say, maybe not so much. 350Z makes for a great track use kind of car, especially if you're buying one that's a little bit thrashed. The 370Zs, like even the automatics were upgraded. The rear is spacious enough for what you need. The interior isn't like a Sheen factory kind of quality like the 350Z was. The 370Z actually has a really nice interior. And out of everything that Nissan did right with this car, the thing that we as enthusiasts, because we like to change everything into slightly shittier versions of what came from factory, except for like a couple 2-3 mods, which we'll talk about in a bit, is the quality of life upgrades they made to the 370Z. Like the things we overlook are the things that they spent the most time on. Okay, we're back to the salmon. It's very, very simple, okay? You need to make sure that your salmon's not frozen. You're gonna take a big pan, okay? Throw just enough avocado oil in there. Make sure you have a cover and bring it up to like 6 on the oven, like slightly above medium. Grab the salmon, take off the skin if you want to, and if you don't, dab it down with a paper towel, get it nice and dry, okay? Then you're gonna put your salt and your pepper on all the sides. You're gonna dab it down a little bit further. Then you're gonna lightly lather it and a little bit of avocado oil. That's just gonna help you prevent from burning, because we burn things a lot when we don't know how to cook. Once the pan is up to temperature, you'll hear it. It'll start making a nice little popping sound. Put the salmon in the pan and do 4 minutes on both sides. Not 5, not 3, not 6, and not 2. Don't try to change the formula. 4, and you'll be perfect, okay? If you wanna add some unhealthy extras, you can take a little cut of butter, put it into the pan, and use it as like a sauce. to baste the salmon, okay? In 10 minutes, you're gonna have some of the best tasting salmon you ever had in your life. And guess what? It's like 4 ingredients. Your significant other is gonna love you for taking a small break of working on your box to treat them with a nice cooked meal. Why does the Nissan 370Z feel sometimes like it was lost or left behind? I honestly forget this car exists as even a budget option sometimes. And that's because the 350Z had such a huge influence. It almost shadowed the 370Z. I mean, the 350Z was around for a while, but it wasn't really around in current day and age as much as the 370Z was. It just, for some reason, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I don't know if even Nissan really had planned for the 370Z to come out. I mean, the 370Z was actually almost scrapped. At 2009, most of the dealerships, cars like the 370Z were going to be scrapped because that's what was happening during the vehicle recession. That huge era of 2007 to 2008 saw a lot of car companies rescind a lot of their fun cars because people just didn't have the money. The only reason that the 370Z even came into effect was because there was just a group of really passionate people at Nissan that promised the Nissan executives that they wouldn't go over budget and then it wouldn't cost that much more to continue the production of the 370Z. They got told yes, and here we are. Now, it's why the car carries so much structural similarities with the 350Z, but the changes were made to the interior and some of the smaller cost changes do warrant it as being a little bit of a better car. So what reasons would you need to convince yourself to buy a Nissan 370Z? You're watching this and you're like, Alex, I trust you with my life and $15,000. I would say, number one, the engine is pretty good. The VQ37 VHR, which means very high revving, because Nissan is super creative with their engine names, was the first Nissan engine to feature variable valve event and lift, which removed the traditional need for a throttle body. How about that? You can share that with your family and friends. Honestly though, good amount of power. You got more than 300-ish horsepower out of the 3.7 liter. It was a super fun engine, naturally aspirated, still reliable. And a lot of the issues that were fixed in the earlier 350Zs got refined by the new 350Z, and then the Rev Up, and then the 37 essentially was just that continuously improved. So it is a good engine. It was actually the first time that it came with auto revving. It was called Synchro Rev Match. You could even get it on a 6-speed manual. So that was pretty cool. And honestly, it is a good looking car. The 370Z in that like Nismo red looks insane. It's one of my favorite looking cars of all time. Even to this day, when people tell me which car I think is one of the best looking ones from factory, it's like a 2018 370Z in that red, that range of year, Nismo spec. It's gorgeous. It's perfect. Fun fact that you may not know though, is that the engine was collaborated with Yamaha to make this a little bit stronger, a little bit better. So are the block, the piston rings, the oil galleys, and the cooling. Yamaha is somehow still hanging on by a thread, and we don't know how, but they are. Now, that's just for US. Everybody that's globally watching this, you know that Yamaha's good. And I'm sorry, please don't take offense. Us people in the United States, we just don't know what to do with Yamaha unless it has 2 wheels. So what are the best mods you can do for this car? Great question. Wheels and tires are huge. 370Zs need 19s, and you're only going down to 18s if you plan to slide the car sideways. 19 by 9.5 plus 22, 19 by 11 plus 15, 2 plus 22 are merely a perfect look. You can run a rear 10.5 plus 12 offset if you want. That's gonna give you access to the Japanese wheels like the Gramlite 57 CRs, for instance, where a lot of those wheels run 10.5 plus 12. Tires for your fronts, 255 40s and 285 35s in the rear. So you can run a pretty meaty front if you want to. You can obviously go down from there if you wanna run a stretch setup and throw it on the ground. But for the most part, we see a lot of people running that 9.5 front and then 11 rear. And what you're gonna see is most people will see that rear end go to a 275 35 series tire, with the 9.5 up front being a 255 40 or a 255 35. The good news is these wheel wells are huge. They're a ton of fun. You can throw pretty much any wheel in it. You're gonna have a blast with it. The only thing I would recommend is try not to get too simple with the spokes. A lot of times these curvy cars, people go with super straight spokes, and a lot of times you need a little bit of bow definition to make the wheel look like it belongs on the car. So if you're ever wondering why something like a Vertini doesn't look that good on it, well, the reason is because those spokes are super straight. Rohanas don't really look good on 370Zs, and I love Rohanas. Usually you're gonna find more love with Stage Nights. You're gonna find more love with Gramlite 57s. You're gonna find more love with some of the work stuff, the Kiwamis, the ZR10s, for instance, where the spoke has a little bit of curvature because it matches the arches and the fenders of the car. So in case you're wondering why I love wheels so much, now you know. Now, I would recommend good tires, no matter what it is that you do. You can buy shitty wheels if you want to. We're not gonna judge, which is totally fine. Gotta stay on a budget. Rear-wheel drive, 300-ish horsepower, manual with the ability to turn traction control off. Get yourself a good set of tires so you don't make your butthole tighter than it already is, okay? You're gonna wanna get Contis, DWS06s, Michelin Pilot Sport 4Ss, Falcons if you want to, Yokohama 8009s are even great. If you need to go into the budget side of things, the Nexen SU1s do okay. Otherwise, you can go into like the general G-Max RS if you want something that looks a little sportier. Nitto Neogens are usually almost always the go-to, just sometimes the sizing and some of the wider sizes is tough, if not impossible to find for that tire. Back to food. While you're searing your salmon, which I just talked about, you're gonna wanna do equal parts water and equal parts rice into a rice cooker. If you don't have a rice cooker, go on Amazon and buy one. This will be the healthiest decision you make because most people, men, only buy rice cookers once they get broken up with and they start going to the gym or they get divorced. You can skip those steps and then you can get your rice cooker early and the rice might save your relationship. If you want a little like saucy tip though, for me, I put a little bit of oil into my rice. It kind of makes it a little bit saucier and a little bit of lemon juice and cilantro. That's how I spruce up my white rice. Now, it takes about 5 minutes per cup, but don't you dare open the top of it once you start cooking it. It's like a sin to do that. You ruin the rice, okay? If you're doing these two things together at the same time, you're gonna have a finished meal in 15 minutes tops, I'm telling you. Then you take your bag of broccoli and you put it in the microwave. It's like 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. Boom. Don't blame me if you have a kid after this. All right, so outside of that, simple mods for the ears would probably be cold air intake, K&N or InGen. Honestly, K&N is cheaper than InGen if you don't care, but InGen obviously has some of the shiny pipes, which is fun. Some people like that. Brakes are huge. 350Z, 370Z, new Z, all brakes, under servoed. What that means is it takes a lot of pressure on the brake to get the car to stop. You have to put a lot of physical force on the brake pedal. That's called an under servoed system. So I typically recommend brake pads that have a high bite, meaning that it kind of counteracts the under servoed brake system. And so if you plan on driving your car around and you occasionally go to a track, the EBC blue stuffs are gonna be pretty much perfect for you. They have a little bit more bite. They'll kind of balance out that brake pedal feel a little bit. And if you're going to like track the car, I cannot say enough good things about the EBC RPX brake pads that we have on martiniworks.com. I've ran them on the R34, the Honda S2000, and the brand new Nissan Z, and they are incredible. They fixed that brake pedal feel damn near perfect, and they have an excellent bite. Cold, warm, does not matter. Just don't get it with white wheels like we did because you will make your white wheels look brown by the end of it. Besides that, exhaust, pretty much anything you want. I mean, NVIDIA has options, Borla has options. There's so many different options. The thing that I'd recommend is you want something with resonators, at least in the test pipes. If you go straight pipe, it's not gonna be good. It's not gonna be good for you, me, the neighbors. People are gonna make fun of you. They're gonna call you a clown. We don't want that. Now, you might think it sounds good on the inside. I promise you it doesn't. I promise you. Like, you just gotta trust us on some of these things. You wonder why 350Zs sound like ass and trumpets and every meme you could imagine on the internet? It's because people don't add resonators to the exhaust. Very simple fix. Coilovers, we're gonna recommend BC Racing if it's a street car. They just did a really good job on the damping for these things. They're really solid, nothing too crazy. If you plan on tracking it, we're always gonna recommend the Fortunato 510s. That's gonna be like our #1 go-to. However, if you need a more budget-friendly option, Tane does have some options for the 350Z as well. Sometimes it requires you to use some of your stock components, but that's what you get when you wanna save some cash. Our floor will always be Tane, then usually BC in that mid tier, then Fortunato in that top tier. Typically that's how we sit, unless we go into the European size. Then we'll talk about Moton and AST and KW, and those things cost as much of a car. Some people will say upgrading the flywheel and clutch while you're doing that clutch slave cylinder replacement is a smart move. I agree if your OEM clutch is over 70,000 miles. People say they have a tendency to stay over 100,000 miles, but the normal OEM replacement is 60 to 80,000. I don't like to play with timelines on things like clutches and transmissions because I don't want them to break while I'm on the road. So with that being said, I'd recommend doing it whenever you can. At this point, your salmon should be nearing completion and your rice should be almost done and your broccoli should still be in the microwave. So it's actually really easy to plate this stuff. Once you actually get the searing done on the salmon. Take it off of the pan because you don't want it to continue cooking. Then you're gonna cut it in half, a little bit for you, a little bit for her. You take the crunchy side. She gets the better side, all right? This is very important. Then you take your rice, grab your little rice scoop, put that, boom, done, nothing more. On the other side, open up the broccoli bag, boom, done, a little bit there. Salmon on the final side, and you're perfect. If you notice it's a little bit dry, take a little bit of that base, put it on top of the salmon before you plate the dish out. Boom, healthy, fast, immediate. Red Lobster, not unlimited shrimp, but better in every way because you cooked it with your own 2 hands. If I saved your relationship, you're welcome. Outside of the broccoli though, you can put pretty much anything you want. If you have the lemon that I mentioned before, squeeze it on the salmon at this time or cut it into really thin bits and then put it on top of the salmon. It looks really classy. I don't know what you do with it, but it looks really good if that's important for you. The final question I get asked, is the Nissan 370Z any good? The answer is yes. The 370Z is a great car. Awesome, it's fun. The reason people argue about the 350Z being more connected has a lot to do with the suspension system that's in the 350Z. A lot of people actually considered it to be better than what they put in the 370Z, which was more of a traditional double wishbone. Yes-ish, but you're really starting to dive into people that are using every single element of the car. If you are planning to drive a car's doors off and you want something that you can just go all the way to practically like pro spec driving for drifting or even for like professional wheel-to-wheel, the 350Z I think would probably be better for you. It's more supported, it's cheaper, it's an easier track car to get into, they get thrashed on all the time, and the level of education that that audience has, I think is deeper than the 370Z audience. However, if you're buying a car that you want to look good, that you want to take to some tracks, that maybe you want to do some autocross with, and you want to casually drift it, I think you're going to do just fine with the 370Z. And a lot of times I would say it's probably gonna be better for your overall lifestyle because it's just a more refined car. Some people don't care about that, some people do. I will leave that choice up to you. At the end of the day though, if you are looking for car parts, moducarmartiniworks.com. If you've got some money from tax returns, you're looking to build it before the season starts, get it done with us, all right? We'll tell you hell yeah, it'll be a fun time. I'll cheer you on, I'll give you a high five. And then you can tell me how your salmon was. But I'm Alex Martini. Let me know what car you want us to talk about next, and we hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you on the next one.